campaign launch in Tamale, the northern part of Ghana, so we can make way for diplomatic affairs. We are going to be brief and ensure that we are able to catch up with what is happening in the north when it comes to the National Democratic Congress. Now, let me begin by introducing my guest. Today, like I mentioned, two interesting discussions on the show today. We will be talking about the AU's convention here in Accra. All 55 member states of the African Union convened in Accra to discuss the future of the African Union, of course, and to also take stock. So we will be talking about that. I'm told my guests are already on standby and I'm excited. Thank you so much for joining us. Another interesting topic that is trending here in Ghana and beyond is the Ghana-Norway Paralympic visa scandal, and we want to talk about that. I'm going to introduce my guest right away. Virtually, they are connected and they will be sharing their views with us. And I said we are taking their views, perspectives from different areas. I have with me His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Abuka Bombande, the former Minister for Foreign Affairs of Ghana, and he is currently the Senior Mediation Advisor with the Support Unit of the UN Department for Political and Peace Building Affairs. Thank you very much, Excellency, for joining us. We are very grateful for your time. We couldn't have had this conversation without your participation. And also all the way from the United States of America, right, New York, one of my favorite cities, is Professor Benjamin Akwe. He's a professor of international relations and comparative politics and government of Africa and Middle East. So he will be, sharing his perspective from the scholars' points of view for us to understand what really we want to get to know when it comes to the topics that we'll be talking about. And also we have my personal person, Ferdinand Bright Joe Asma, the founder, Youth in Diplomacy and Community Development and Head of Programs, Emerging Diplomats Model United Nations. Emerging Diplomats Model United Nations. Thank you so much for joining me, sir. I really appreciate it. And of course, we also will be taking the conversation from the journalist points of view, where we have Abdullah Mohammed, senior journalist with TV3, joining us also on the panel for us to have our conversation today. Thank you so much. And then when we come back to the studio here, like I mentioned earlier, Ruben Addo is the news editor for Pan-African Television and a seasoned journalist, my senior colleague, and he's seated right here in the studio with me. So he's also going to be talking from the journalist point of view for us to look at this, these two interesting topics that we have put together for today's show. Now, let me just start as we go about the convention of the African Union here. That is going to be our first conversation. So like I mentioned, the SIT Mid-Year Coordination Meeting / the 45th Ordinary Session of the AU's Executive Council took place right here in Ghana. The African Union SIT Mid-Year Coordination Meeting has taken place in Accra, bringing together the African Union regional economic communities and member states to evaluate the status of continental integration on all aspects. Themed Educate an African Fit for the 21st century, building resilient education systems for increased access to inclusive, lifelong, quality and relevant learning in Africa. The meeting sought to take stock of its operations and recalibrate to meet the needs of the African people. We have some bites and we would like to take a look at those bites before we start our conversation.
On our continental integration agenda, building on and reviewing the progress made so far in implementing our continental integration initiatives, the need for innovative financing and the establishment of African Union financial institutions to support the second decade of Agenda 2063 is of the utmost necessity. The findings from evaluation of the first decade of Agenda 2063 underscore the critical need to consolidate fragmented financial instruments for development. Currently, our financial landscape is scattered with numerous institutions and initiatives operating in silos. This fragmentation leads to inefficiencies, duplication of efforts, and suboptimal utilization of resources. I therefore call for consolidation and employ our AU institutions to provide the technical and strategic recommendations as to how this can be done. By consolidating our development funding instruments, we can create a more cohesive and effective financial framework that ensures resources are allocated where they are most needed. This consolidation will not only streamline our efforts, but will also improve our capacity to mobilize domestic and external resources efficiently. Another crucial proposal I would like to highlight is the initiative made by Ghana at the last AU summit for African countries to deposit 30% of their sovereign reserves into African multinational banks, instead of allowing these resources to lie passively in foreign banks, often at negative interest rates. This initiative aims to strengthen our self-reliance and reinforce the capacity of African financial institutions. By retaining a sizable portion of our reserves within the continent, we can enhance the stability and liquidity of our financial systems, providing a stronger foundation for economic growth. This approach will also empower our banks to support large-scale developmental projects and create a more resilient financial ecosystem that is less dependent on external financial institutions. I'm mainly focused on our continental integration agenda, building on and reviewing the progress made so far in implementing our continental integration initiatives. The need for innovative financing and the establishment of African Union financial institutions to support the second decade of Agenda 2063 is of the utmost necessity. The findings from evaluation of the first decade of Agenda 2063 underscore the critical need to consolidate fragmented financial instruments for development. Currently, our financial landscape is scattered with numerous institutions and initiatives operating in silos. This fragmentation leads to inefficiencies, duplication of efforts, and suboptimal utilization of resources. I therefore call for consolidation and employ our AU institutions to provide the technical and strategic recommendations as to how this can be done. By consolidating our development funding instruments, we can create a more cohesive and effective financial framework that ensures resources are allocated where they are most needed. This consolidation will not only streamline our efforts, but will also improve our capacity to mobilize domestic and external resources efficiently. Another crucial proposal I would like to highlight is the initiative made by Ghana at the last AU summit for African countries to deposit 30% of their sovereign reserves into African
To reach to sustainable development goals and achieve Agenda 2063, we must put education, science, technology, and innovation at the forefront of our efforts. Unfortunately, Africa faces significant challenges, primarily due to the inadequate financing and high indebtedness of most of our countries. Governments struggle to access long-term concessional financing. Official development assistance and foreign direct investment are also dwindling, and our limited tax to GDP ratios further constrains domestic resource mobilization. These financial challenges are exacerbated by rising food and energy costs, fueled by increasing and unpredictable extreme weather events. which reduce the fiscal space for our countries to operate. The global level playing field remains uneven, with Africa's borrowing costs being over 10 times higher than Germany and nearly 4 times higher than the United States of America. We must therefore persist in advocating for the reform of the global financial architecture that is fit for purpose. To reach sustainable development goals and achieve Agenda 2063, we must put education, science, technology, and innovation at the forefront of our efforts. Unfortunately, Africa faces significant challenges, primarily due to the inadequate financing and high indebtedness of most of our countries. Governments struggle to access long-term concessional financing. Official development assistance and foreign direct investment are also dwindling, and our limited tax to GDP ratios further constrains domestic resource mobilization. These financial challenges are exacerbated by rising food and energy costs, fueled by increasing and unpredictable extreme weather events, which reduce the fiscal space for our countries to operate. The global level playing field remains uneven, with Africa's borrowing costs being over 10 times higher than Germany and nearly 4 times higher than the United States of America. We must therefore persist in advocating for the reform of the global financial architecture that is fit for purpose. To reach sustainable development goals and achieve Agenda 2063,
Right, welcome back. So those were the bites from the 6th AU mid-year coordination meeting / the 45th ordinary session of the Executive Council, which took place few days last week. I think it started on the 19th of July to the 21st of July. So the host, of course, the President of the Republic of the country, also was the one who gave the opening remarks to the event, and of course the United Nations Economic Commissioner, Executive Secretary. All right, so Claver Gatet. We were actually struggling with whether it is Gatete or Gatet, but I'm sure we will. Now, Ruben, our virtual guest, welcome to Diplomatic Affairs. Ruben, how are you?
I'm fit as a fiddle. It's always an honor and privilege to be on the show which has transcended the shows of this country.
Well, thank you very much. We are happy to have you as well. And like I mentioned earlier, our virtual guests are also online, and I will be bringing them on this particular topic, which we will be discussing very soon. We've already started conversations around that. Now, I asked, is it the usual teaing, as in drinking tea and just gathering, coming every year to sit and talk, or is this a game changer? Is this a game changer? Now, first of all, you as a journalist, as a senior journalist, an editor with Pan-African Television, do you think mainstream media, Africa, have we really done justice by holding our leaders accountable?
Well, according to Warren Gamaliel Bennis, leadership is the capacity to translate vision into reality. And from where I sit, I think as a continent, we have not held our leaders accountable from a journalistic point of view, because if you look at the people to whom power is entrusted, some laid a perfect foundation because we all know our history, where we came from and where we find ourselves now. So ideally, one would have thought that giving the resources at our disposal, Africa would have been a common good to advance a course which would enable Africans to be better off than it is today. But unfortunately, Africa has become a hotbed of political instability. There have been a series of military adventurism in some parts of the continent, and I don't think this bodes well for a continent which is the second largest after Asia in terms of size. And looking at where we started off and where we find ourselves, I think the future looks bleak because we always sit and we engage in what I term as we only talk, but there is little action.
We only talk, but there is little action.
There is little action because we sit as leaders and put our thoughts on paper, but actualizing them becomes an enormous challenge. And I think we have to move beyond that because as a continent, we don't need strong men, but we need institutions to work. If the institutions we've established are put to good use, I think the African will be better off than he finds himself or herself now. We've had issues with colonialism, racism, exploitation, and all that. But I believe that given the foundation some of our leaders laid, if we're able to emulate the path they set, I think that Africa would have been better off as it is now.
All right, so we can actually do better when it comes to managing the continent. Is that right? Okay, then. So, I mean, you and I struggled when we were trying to look for information on the internet. We were trying to see what most African media organizations, TV, print, online, what they might have published from the event, which just ended, you know. And we struggled a lot with information. We actually had news around the pre-organization of the events, right? But after, we were struggling to get information on the event, and that's why I asked whether mainstream media, when it comes to Africa, the continent, whether we have indeed or we are playing our role as we should by putting out information for the people's consumption, and whether we are very much interested in what is happening at the level of the African Union. I'm going to come back to you, but we have Dr. Emmanuel Bombade, who is joining us via Zoom. Like I mentioned, all three guests of ours are joining us via Zoom. All right, so I'm told Doc is back. Dr. Emmanuel Bombade, His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Habuka Bombade, former Foreign Affairs Minister, and of course he's joining us on the show. And I want to ask, Doc, if you are there, if you can hear me, I would like to ask whether the question we are asking is this the usual tea-in when African leaders meet on the continent to discuss issues affecting our continent, or this is one of those moves that will change something on the African continent? Your thoughts, please.
Everybody appreciates what it means to review the progress that you are making and to now be able to chart forward the type of improvements that are necessary to be able to make a good impact, to be able to ensure that your pathway is not crooked. The problem is, what are we reviewing? We are at a bad state of affairs on our continent, and I heard one of the panelists talk about our bleak future. If you are reviewing mid-year progress in terms of key activities that are supposed to ensure the forward movement of the continent, the first thing is that you are engaging your media, because it is through the media that the whole of Africa is following their continental multilateral institution, the African Union. The fact that the people cannot even know what is happening, and let me put it simply, let's not even talk about Africa, let's talk about Ghanaians. The meeting in Accra, how many Ghanaians knew about this media review? That tells you a lot, and it tells you a lot because as long as the people of Africa cannot be the ones bringing the energy and pulling along what we want through Agenda 2063 in terms of our aspirations, these meetings only end up becoming what you might call normal meetings that brings bureaucrats and leaders to spend time and to leave, and nothing happens. And when I say nothing happens, for me, when the people do not feel the impact of the weight of decisions in terms of how they are moving forward, then you cannot evaluate it to have been impactful.
Well, you've said it all, Excellency. It's one of the things that we were looking at, like I mentioned, when we wanted information, just collecting information from the internet to just find out whether indeed the media on the African continent, whether we have also played our role in terms of dissemination of information. To our dismay, we actually didn't find much. What we found on the internet was the beginning, actually the build up to the event itself, but the aftermath of the event we didn't find much in terms of information. And also I was just asking myself, shouldn't we go beyond just reporting what happens every time our leaders meet to discuss issues affecting our continent, and begin to rather probe by way of engaging them one-on-one, finding the opportunity and speaking to them, and just to ensure that they are actually walking the talk. And the ordinary African, even Ghana, as you mentioned, you rightly stated, is really the Ghanaian very much interested in some of these activities when it comes to multilateralism on the African continent. And I'm happy you have, your submission actually, spell all these things out. But another question, before I move away from you and engage other panelists, Doc, I would like to find out, do you think the African is very much in tune with the operations of the continental body, though?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Let me take this opportunity very quickly to correct that I was the deputy foreign minister and not the minister, so that our viewers, I know in my designation it is correct, but it came out as minister. Let me your question is very important in my view. There are two levels. Should you, the media, struggle to find information? I don't think so. Because if you ask me whether the people are in tune, the people will be in tune once they are informed and educated. And the people practice. But should you in media practice struggle to find the type of information that brings the people along? I don't think so. I think our multilateral institution must be forthcoming in engaging you, the media, at all times, because you are the medium through which the people can be involved. Keep in mind, we are in a multipolar world
right
now as we speak, and your panelists were making very good indications in that direction. Nobody can replace the African people for the progress of Africa in terms of its place in our global community and what Africa can achieve for its people. And if all our arrangements, let me just take one. If you look at the African Charter on Democracy, Election and Governance, we are suffering the consequences of insecurity because the political will to ensure that with fidelity, we respect our own charter, we respect our own treaties. It's not there. And who are the people to ensure that respect? It's our leaders. But the leaders are looking at what is the political gain for themselves personally. And they do not care whether in pursuing their personal political gains, they violate the charter that we have all signed. And this is our challenge. Now, that can only change when the people are informed and educated, and now can hold the leaders accountable so that all the parameters outlined and the pathway to deepening good governance, deepening democracy is then achieved. But why would we expect people to hold their leaders accountable when they don't even know on what basis to hold them accountable.
Exactly.
And when it becomes too late, then you then see the type of situation as we have in Kenya. And so I would want to put the case that whereas the media should do their work, but the media not be the ones struggling for the information. The multilateral institution should be good at making that available. And it's the same for our own regional, our own sub-regional ECOWAS multilateral institution. And that if the people do not know what is happening, then we cannot expect the people to be involved. In fact, in ECOWAS, and I'm ending here, we talk about the ECOWAS of the people. But that is far from the truth. Which people are we talking about when the people who are ECOWAS do not even know what ECOWAS is or what ECOWAS is doing? And last week, the ECOWAS Parliament was meeting in Abuja. Very important issues were coming out. How many people in South Africa followed what was going on in Abuja? Very few. Only those of us who are following these because of the work we do.
Right.
Yes, we, but not the people. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much, Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Habuka Bombade. I'm told you will be taking leave of us very soon, but I pray that you do make some time more to join us for the other topic that will be followed right after we are done with this one. All right, now it's time for me to... Ruben, it's very interesting because you and I just went through what we are discussing right now in the studios, and for me, because of where I sit, I don't have any choice other than to be interested in African matters or affairs. We just got back from Europe, Madrid, Spain to be precise. Ordinarily, I should be sitting on this platform talking about the assignment in Spain, but the question with my team when we sat down and were looking at what to treat this Saturday, I told myself, no, this is a multilateral convention here in Africa, and Ghana was the host of this event. There is no way we are going to have a show without projecting this multilateral convention here in Accra, where we have all 55 member states of the African Union convening here in Accra. We can't talk about any other thing other than this. Really, do you see us, one more time before I go to our panelists online, do you really see the media as using their medium to really empower the African?
I think to an extent the media has done a commendable job when it comes to portraying Africa. There's so much people want to know about Africa, and I think as the media we owe it as a duty to portray what our continent is and what it has in stock. So in spite of the few problems we've had as a continent, I believe that there are so many positives we can project to the outside world, so far as Africa is concerned. And unfortunately, we've fully dedicated our time, our energy, our resources in telling the African story in a particular way to the outside world. That is where we fall short. So others have taken undue advantage of that to portray Africans as culturally backward, and that when it comes to development, we are not at par with the outside world. But I think it's something we really need to guard against, because whether we like it or not, this is our continent. We need to do what will make the continent stand out so far as the Committee of Affairs is concerned, so that when we go out there, when we represent the continent at international gatherings, we can beat our chest that in spite of the myriad of problems plaguing our dear continent, the few successes we've chalked, we can project it to the outside world.
Right, the media indeed has a role to play. Now, still on the same topic, I'm going to bring my online guest panelist on, and this time I'm going to invite Professor Benjamin Akwe, who is a professor of international relations and comparative politics and government of Africa and Middle East, and of course he will be speaking from the scholar's point of view. Do I have Professor Benjamin Akwe with us?
Yeah, Harriet, I'm here.
Hi, how are you doing, Prof?
I'm doing great. How are you and your panelists?
Well, we are doing wonderful. Thank you so much for joining us on today's episode.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Well, I know this topic is very dear to your heart. Anything around the African continent, even though you don't reside here on the continent, you still have a deep connection with our continent and, of course, Ghana as well. From where you sit, the AU met here in Accra, all 55 states. The foreign affairs ministers of the African Union met here to take stock and, of course, look at the way forward in ensuring that the mandate of the AU is met and, of course, delivered in changing the life of the ordinary African and, of course, Ghana as well. We were just talking about the role of the media, but for me, from where you sit as a scholar, I know a lot of research and data go into some of these things. Like we mentioned earlier, we were struggling with information to the core, that anyone at all who just, taps something on their laptop or computer should be able, once you punch something, we should have information regarding some of these things, because this is Africa. And this was a grand event, but unfortunately, to our dismay, we actually had to struggle to get the aftermath report of this convention. Now, from where you sit, how important is data and also research when it comes to some of these multilateral conventions here on the continent?
All right, thank you very much. I appreciate your earlier panelist, right, and some of what he said. Yeah, okay, I am actually an academic, right, but I engage a lot of professionals. I'm also the host of the Sankofa African Affairs webinar, where I engage Africans on the continent and Africans in the diaspora, right. Now, what I guess want to bring to your attention, right, I'm speaking on behalf of Africans on the continent in terms of the media. Most of the media on the African continent tend to look inward. If you look at Ghana, for example, maybe with the exception of some program that you host, but most of the media houses, they tend to look within their various countries, right? They don't look outside unless it's become a very critical issue in terms of probably what is happening in Kenya. Even if you see the reporting on Kenya, you wouldn't get the actual fact as to what is actually going on. They just say something like, okay, this is what is happening in Kenya. So that has been a problem, right? We tend to look inwards. Almost all African country media houses, they tend to look within. They don't look very, very international to understand what is really going on the African continent. I'm saying this thing because I engage a lot of people in the media. Now, secondly, if you, I listened to your earlier Dr. Bambadi, and he was saying something very, well, I may disagree with some of the things that he is saying. He mentioned the word accountability, that the people cannot hold their leaders' accountability. People keep throwing those words out. How can there be accountability when there's no transparency? Right, it should be transparency first. Because if you are transparent and the media have access to information, then it is when they can hold you accountable. But if you are not transparent with information, how do you expect the media to hold you accountable? So that's the problem with the African Union as an institution. That has been its biggest problem, right? Like you said, I'm in the United States, so I was able to access some of the information, and our friends who also attended the seminar, right? So I have some of the documents and everything. But let me tell you something very interesting. They were talking about the AU Agenda 2063. They were talking about African Union financing for infrastructure. But one thing that the review did not actually take a look at, it's like every 6 months, the AU does a review on elections on the African continent in respect to democracy. But this time you realize that they did not talk about the elections very well, because most of the elections that has happened on the African continent has been very problematic. Let's see what happened in South Africa. Let's see what happened in Chad. Let's see what happened in Senegal. Let's see what happened in Rwanda. So you realize that they could not speak to the issue of democracy with respect to elections, because the elections have not been very, very good. See what happened in Togo in terms of the constitutional review. The African Union was very, very silent. They didn't say anything. You saw what happened in Senegal. The African Union was very, very silent. You saw what happened in Chad. The African Union was very silent. You saw what happened in DR Congo. The African Union was very, very silent. So the issues that are core to the African Union, right, that they should focus on, because all the leaders have their own internal problems. And because they have their internal problems, they don't want to be commenting on other leaders' problems. Right? Have you heard the African Union make a broad statement about what is happening in Kenya? No. Have you heard the African Union making a broad statement about what is happening in Uganda in terms of the protests? Have you heard the African Union speaking broadly about the planned protests in Nigeria? No. So most of these African leaders have their own problem in their own backyard. That's why I'm saying that even though they tend to focus on accountability, it should be transparency first. The leaders should be very, very transparent with information. Then it is the media can hold them responsible. But if you're not transparent, how do you expect people to be to hold you accountable? The purpose of democracy brings transparency, right? It brings transparency first before it brings accountability. But in the case of transparency, it has been suppressed, and you are asking the media to hold you accountable. Hold you accountable on what exactly? So that is a problem that we have. They keep saying democracy brings accountability, but it has to start with transparency first. And that is the point that we are missing. I'm a Ghanaian. All of you live in Ghana. You know what is happening in Ghana. You didn't get the information in terms of RTI. You filed for RTI and you want to get information from the RTI secretariat. It became a problematic issue. They hold on to the information for ages before they release it. Why should you pass an ITI bill and people want to have access to information and you don't want to be very transparent about this? So these are some of the issues. The issue has to do with African leaders or African institutions not being transparent. People make the argument that we should have the institution. Democracy is about institutions. So we have the institutions already. The institutions do exist. What else do we want again? We say we don't want strong leaders. We want strong institutions. Democracy is about creating institutions to hold people accountable. And we have the institution. So why is that the institution cannot hold the people accountable? It's because the institutions are not transparent and the leaders are also not transparent. So this has been the bane of the media on the African continent.
Right. Thank you very much, Prof. And of course, Professor Quaye. Now, before I move away from you and engage the rest of the panelists, my final question to you is that, do you think as we go by every other thing, all the practicalities in terms of the state of our continent, do you think that we are on the right path to our aspirations when it comes to the AU's Agenda 2063 projects?
Now, if you look at a theme, if you read some of the excerpt that came out, they keep using the word integration.
Right.
Right. They keep using the word Africa should integrate. Right. There should be a difference between integration and Pan-Africanism. The two are never the same. Right. Pan-Africanism is you are moving towards what? A continental United States. That is one federal government. But if you are talking about integration, it means what? There should be some sort of what? Cultural, economic and political relationship. Let's take for example ECOWAS. For example, if you say ECOWAS should integrate, they should integrate economically. In what sense are you speaking in economic terms? Most of the ECOWAS countries produce the same goods and services, right? So in that means they hardly trade among themselves. If you look at trade, bilateral trade between ECOWAS countries, it's very, very small compared to trade or what we call external trade with other countries. So it means that we basically produce the same homogeneous goods, right? That makes it very, very difficult for us to trade. Now the point you're talking about, okay, what about politics or government? Look at what is happening on the continent in terms of democracy. How do we, Ghana doesn't want to comment about what is happening in Senegal. Ghana doesn't want to comment about what is happening in Cote d'Ivoire because everybody has a problem in his or her backyard.
So do you think that the AU's Agenda 2063 is feasible enough? Do you think that we can achieve that?
Of course, right? Of course. The point is that if you have an agenda, it's all about getting the commitment, right? And the resources. The point is that historically, most of these agenda that we have, we do not have the resources and we have to go and look for funding from our donors. And when our donors come in, then they dictate to you, right, the terms and conditions under which you have to go about doing it. If you look at Agenda 2063, they are talking about infrastructure development, right, where they have to raise money on the African continent for development. But the question is, are African countries, the individual countries, very developed to be able to contribute their quota or to be able to access the necessary finance, either from multilateral or bilateral organizations, to be able to develop. So these are some of the challenges. And if you read the document very well, they said they are depending on those in the diaspora. It states clearly that they are going to depend on those in the diaspora to also help them. And you know that there's a policy which has to do with the state region, the diaspora.
The diaspora.
The city. That itself is a problem. If you look at the charter very, very carefully, it's supposed to be considered as a state region. The whole of the diaspora is supposed to be a state region. But it seems like individual countries are doing the diaspora on individual basis, contrary to what the terms and policy actually state. So these are some of the problems, that we have very lofty ideas, right? If we meet people, we discuss good things, but how to go forward becomes a problem because we don't have the finances to do these things on ourselves.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I'll come back to you. At this point, I'm going to Ruben. I'm not going to come to you yet. I will have to bring in Abdallah Mohammed, who is with TV3, my senior journalist. Abdallah Mohammed, are you on the line with us, please?
Can you hear me, Harriet?
Yes, loud and clear. Thank you so much for joining us, Abdallah. How is it going in the newsroom?
Yes, it's been a very busy day today. You know, the opposition NDC is launching its campaign, so it's been a very busy day for us here. We've been giving them up to the speed coverage of the events back in Tamat. So we're here since morning, just trying to do our best.
I can imagine what is happening in the newsroom. Well, Abdallah, let me go straight to the point. Now, Professor Benjamin Akwe and, of course, His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Habu Kabombande have shared their submissions on this particular topic, which is the Convention of the African Union here in Accra. The 6th mid-year coordination meeting with the Executive Council of the African Union here in Accra. It was a big event, a grand one, if you ask me. Now, I would want to find out, how extensive did your media house actually cover this event?
Well, so for us here, there's a deliberate agenda to ensure that anything that is Africa related, that that collective effort to ensure that we promote the African interest to a large extent. I mean, content related to these issues are prioritized in this within the media general group. So for us here, the business team was there as usual to provide extensive coverage of the program.
That's great. Now, I'm just going to quickly browse through some of the aspirations when it comes to the AU's Agenda 2063, and then I would want us to talk about how we can achieve this if we do not really go to the core to fight some of the problems that we are faced with as a continent. We are talking about misgovernance on the African continent and misuse of funds, and of course our leaders are not being held accountable, and it appears the ordinary African is not bothered because whatever happens at the level of the African Union does not really translate directly into their lives. So why do I have to care about this? Now, from where you sit, I want to find out whether indeed we have played our role by using our medium to educate the African and then the Ghanaian when it comes to some of these multilateral conventions on the African continent.
Well, I would say that to a large extent, the media has done its best. The media has been a tool for the dissemination of information and to inform people generally about governance within their jurisdictions. To a large extent, at least within the 4th Republican Constitution of the Republic of Ghana, the media, I would say, has done best, and we have actually pushed for the right things to be done. So, for example, Doc just mentioned the RTR, which was recently passed by the legislature, by the government and Parliament of Ghana.
That was Professor Benjamin Akwe.
Exactly, Professor Benjamin Akwe, yes. Sorry about that. So this platform actually has helped us to a large extent to access information from government agencies who ordinarily, would run away from being accountable to us. But there is still a lot we need to do. We need to press the buttons and ensure that these people who are mandated with the responsibility of governing us are I mean, at least to a large extent, they should be accountable, because if you are entrusted with the wealth, the resources, the monies of the country, the natural resources, and in the end, we have to crawl literally to your doorstep to ask for information. I don't think it will augur very well generally for the democracy that we are all fighting to consolidate. So to a large extent, the media in Ghana has done well. Now we have a lot of media personnel going into investigative journalism, going behind the scenes to try and get information, and to the extent of even taking some of these issues to the Office of the Special Prosecutor, issues that border on corruption and conduct of public officers who have been entrusted with the responsibility, managing our resources judiciously. So to an extent, the media has done well, but I still think there's room for improvement, Harriet, because you travel outside there and you see how brains are working, how other people are putting resources together.
And our leaders also travel. I mean, I'm sure this is what they do for a living. Every now and then they are in and out of the country for one reason or the other. Shouldn't they be the ones replicating best practices when they come back home?
I agree to a large extent with you, because I tell people that, look, if you haven't traveled out there to see how things are working, how economies are viable, are being turned around within a matter of months, you will not have an appreciation of how things are done elsewhere. So if we look at the trajectory, the way we do things here, it leaves much to be desired, Harriet. We need to change the status quo if we really want to get there and turn around things and put together a future for our younger ones who are coming up. So there's room for improvement. That's all I can say for now.
All right, so that's good, Abdallah. So please, once again, from where you sit as a journalist, I would want to find out, do you think we are far from our aspirations when it comes to the AU's Agenda 2063?
I mean, if you talk about the AU's Agenda 2026, 2063, there are responsibility on each of the legs. The media has a responsibility. We have a responsibility to play as far as achieving this agenda is concerned. Our leaders, who we are all looking up to, they also have a responsibility to play. If we put our shoulders to the wheel, like Prof said earlier, I mean, there's nothing that cannot be achieved under the sun once there's commitment and determination, Harriet.
All right, I'll come back to you. Thank you very much. Now, I'm going to, Ruben, you are in the studio with me, so I would want us to relax and then take the views of our online panelists before we come to the studio and wrap up. So my next guest is going to be speaking from the youth's perspective, and we would like to know what they think. And of course, I'm going to be speaking to him on the basis of the theme for this year's AU's meeting here, which is the 6th mid-year coordination meeting of the Council of the Executive Council of the African Union, and it's themed "Educate an African Fit for the 21st Century: Building Resilient Education Systems for Increased Access to Inclusive, Lifelong, Quality and Relevant Learning in Africa." And that is the theme that was the theme when they met here in Accra. Now, Ferdinand, my guest is Ferdinand Joe Asma. Mr. Asma, are you on the line, please?
Yes, Her Excellency Harriet Nati. Thank you.
Have I earned the title of Excellency yet? I don't think so. I don't think so. I prefer to be addressed as a journalist, just doing my job, so. But it's good to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you too for having me on the show. I really appreciate it.
Let's talk about inclusion. From where you sit, what do you think when it comes to the African Union? Hello, can you hear me?
Hello?
Yes.
I think my network was breaking.
Okay, can you hear me? Should I repeat the question?
Yes.
Please, let's talk about inclusion. From where you sit as a student and, of course, youth of our beautiful country and, of course, the continent, from where you sit, what do you make of inclusion when it comes to the African Union?
If you talk about inclusion, that is the youth, I think there's a there's a vast, difference between we having a conversation among ourselves as the youth and engaging the people at the realm of affairs. Most of the time there are policies which says, okay, inclusion of the youth, let's involve the youth on this and all. And you can see some titles on programs that are the youth. Which youth are we engaging? What are the perspectives are you putting into account for the policy that you are formulating? You understand? So most of the times at the realm of affairs is the youth. But what exactly are you getting from the youth to implement in the policy that you are formulating? So I was actually happy for this year's mid-year coordination meeting because of some highlights.
Well,
on the theme, which is to educate on educate an African face for the 21st century. I mean, to me, it's carrying a good omen, heralding a message of hope to the youth.
Right.
Many of the successful action surrounded, transforming education, imbibing skills in the youth to thrive in the 21st century, promoting African free trade, and also easy and accessible payment system for economic and economic integration and development. It is important to know that about 60 to 70% of the population of Africa is the youth. And for this number, you can say that is the key to Africa's sustainable development. Now, Franklin Roosevelt once said, I borrow his words, that we can always build the future for the youth, but we can build the youth for the future. Now, if you talk about the education transformation, I believe that there's the need to always transform our education system in a way that it will equip the youth to embrace the unending changing, with regards to technological advancement, such that the youth can prepare to catch up with the demands of our time now. In basic terms, if you rely on the old way of learning, this is not going to make room for the youth to address the challenges of the 21st century. Time evolves, and so should the education system also be. Now, let's talk about the scaling up. There are lots of the creatives in Africa which are untapped. This is because there's no infrastructure, technology, and opportunity to, unearth this potential. And this plays a key integral part of the global economy in Africa. When you talk about the creatives, you can talk about architecture, art, craft, fashion, music, dance, film, media, a lot of them. Not everyone can adopt to the classroom way of learning. Some do through art. So if the infrastructure, the technology, and opportunity is not provided, we risk losing this potential, which is an integral part of the global economy. So if we also, I will try to combine the African free trade and access to easy payment. We can't talk about free trade without talking about easy and accessible payment.
Yeah.
It's even difficult to make payment from Ghana to Nigeria to South Africa to Zambia and even back to Ghana. It's really difficult. We organize international conferences, and when it comes to the payment, it's really difficult to get payment from international delegates. So I believe that what was discussed at the 6th mid-year coordination meeting was actually a good omen, a message to the youth. My problem is, if this is going to be put in policy implementation, then I believe this is a good thing. It's a good policy that is going to benefit the youth. But the question is, the mid-year meeting actually was to review. You understand? You cannot pinpoint that. Of course, once this is said, it is going to be a matter of consideration where things are going to be put in place. So let's see. We keep our fingers crossed. We believe that all these things that have been discussed probably are going to, one way or the other, be implemented to benefit the youth here.
Hopefully it's going to be a game changer. And of course, you are the founder, Youth in Diplomacy and Community Development. Let me ask you one question. I had the opportunity to mount one of your platforms to share my 2 cents when it comes to my field, as an international relations journalist with a group of these vibrant young, folks. And I want to ask, how often do you really preach African issues, African affairs, Pan-Africanism, and not just be directed towards the United Nations and other international organizations? How often do you do that?
Well, we have groups that we normally do discuss that. And basically, the Edmund is more of the United Nations, but also we cannot eliminate the African context from the whole of the United Nations. No, we can't do that, because even the United Nations, we have the African bloc who mostly also send their submission to the United Nations. You know, so it's very important, it's very imperative that whatever is important to the African bloc, they make it known to the United Nations. Now, for us, the young people, even though we have an inclination of working with the United Nations someday, we believe that we can start home. That if the opportunity is created, that a lot of young people are planning and thinking of traveling outside of the country. Why? Because we preach about Africa, but do we benefit in Africa? Do we benefit from Africa? So the institutions are there, we talk about them, but the benefits we need to get as young people from our own continent, we are not getting. If it is better out there, then better we never not discuss African Union, African unity, African integration, African development, because we are talking about it, we are discussing, but there's nothing in for us. So if young people are going to be engaged in this conversation time and over again, they need to see results.
Right.
They need to see results. If they are not seeing results, they are rather going to, focus more on the outside world rather than talking and sharing more ideas about developing Africa.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Asma, and of course, thank you very much to all our panelists. Now, Reuben, just sum it up in 1 minute. Sum it up. What would you make? Is this really a game changer for us? I mean, just to end it all, is it a game changer or the usual gathering and just meeting and greeting? Are we going to see something different after this event?
That's if we only put into practice what we did.
enter Australia. To the suspension of the then Director General for the National Sports Authority, Robert Safo Mensah, and Deputy Minister for Youth and Sports, Pius Enam Hadzide. The National Intelligence Bureau launched an investigation into the alleged fraud, and President Akufo-Addo later cleared Hadzide based on the report, but Safo Mensah remained suspended. And we have the excerpts from the minister's speech.
And the team that went wasn't also representing Ghana, as it has been reported in some of the media. So the Norwegian authorities, that's the embassies, to never even had the opportunity. Normally, even the Ministry of Foreign Sports, we don't issue letters directly to any of the embassies. We normally will write to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, for Ministry of Foreign Affairs to then work on our behalf to any of the specific embassies or missions. I just want to use this opportunity to appeal to all the embassies and high commissions or consular offices that anytime they get any requests from any federation, and without the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration and the Ministry of Youth and Sports supporting documents, they should verify from the ministry before they take. Failure to do so, they do so on their own risks, because I could have only taken responsibility if they've notified, they've followed the protocols. The protocols is, if you want to go and engage in any competition, or even if you are not representing Ghana, you are just a federation, and you have your own competition to go and compete internationally, you follow protocols. You write to the National Sports Authority. Then the National Sports Authority will write to the ministry. In this case, I've just told you that nothing of such nature happened until I even got the reportage. We didn't know. Secondly, the Norwegian authority who issued the visas to the athletes didn't see it prudent to even verify from the ministry, because to see whether these are athletes, genuine athletes or not. So to your question, whether I'll take responsibility, I'm sorry, I can't.
Right, so that was the sports minister, Mustafa Yusuf, actually, who held a press conference to give his side of the story, and of course issued more or less like a disclaimer, stating that his outfit didn't really know much about this, and also laying the blame on the doorstep of the Embassy of Norway here in Accra. Now, I know that our guests online, guests are still with us. I'm told that His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Habu Kabumbande had to take a break to be in another meeting. But of course, we have Abdullah Mohammed, and of course, Professor Benjamin Akwe and Ferdinand Joe Asma on the line with us. Now, I'll begin with you, Ruben. This is not the first time this is happening here in the country. Is this really going to end anytime soon? And why do we always have to, tarnish our image in these circumstances like that?
According to English metaphysical poet John Donne, no man is an island, which is why as a country we need to rely on others to make sure that the agenda we are pushing becomes a reality, but not a myth. So whether we like it or not, we need to enjoy support and assistance from sister countries in making Ghana a better place for us all. And we've had these multilateral relations with lots of countries within and outside Africa. Unfortunately, from the minister's speech, I realized that he spoke to exonerate himself from the debacle because he said due diligence wasn't pursued.
Yeah.
How come the Norwegian consulate or whatever issued visas to these athletes without verifying to ensure whether they were genuine Paralympians who were going to represent the nation or not? So I think that is where the problem started, and we need to address that problem before we make sure that we deal with those found or deemed culpable in this sordid act?
Well, you are right. Before I engage our virtual guest, Abdallah is on the line, and I'm going to start with Abdallah. But let me just state that one would have thought that the stakeholders, starting with the ministry in charge of Ghana's international relations, of course, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, by now would have issued a circular or something, a presser, actually telling us what's happening in this direction. But we still haven't had any information directly from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration. And I want to believe that conversations are ongoing behind closed doors before they could share anything with the Ghanaian public. And even by now, I do believe that they have engaged their partners, the Norwegian counterparts, to also see how best they can amicably resolve this issue and, of course, bring culprits to order, as you mentioned. So we'll see how that goes. But I am still going to engage from the journalistic point of view. Abdallah Mohammed, are you here with us?
Yes, I'm here, Harriet.
All right, Abdallah, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Are you here with us?
Yes, I can hear you loud and clear.
Wonderful. Now, you do a lot of travels, just as I do. And we have an experience together. We both have a common experience where before this life, we had applied for a visa and we were, denied the visas. Now, I would like to ask what do you think is going to happen to the ordinary Ghanaian when it comes to visa applications? Do you think the requirements are going to be stricter or tighter when it comes to requirements for visa applications with our Western counterparts?
Well, when we all woke up to this very embarrassing spectacle, we knew trouble had loomed, because we already know the difficulty people experience in some of these embassies when they go in search of visas to travel for even genuine purposes. It's not everyone who needs visas to go and not come back again. So I remember in engaging some of the guests we had over the past few weeks on this particular issue, they said that, look, for some of us who are even members of parliament, we tell you, we go to the embassies every day and we see them queuing actually to go through application processes to be granted visas to travel out of this country. So obviously, this very embarrassing and sad spectacle is going to make things very tighter and difficult for a lot of us who, love to travel a lot. And the MPs and the parliamentarians, the ministers of state are also not spared, because look, if you go and misrepresent your personality to some of these agencies and you expect that these same people should process visas for genuine travelers, you should expect that some level of scrutiny is going to be intensified.
Right.
In the end, it's not going to augur well for genuine applicants like some of us who want to travel in the future. So I think that whatever it takes for the ministry and the relevant institutions to assist the Norwegian officials. We know the Schengen area is made up of more than 27 countries. And if someone enters Europe through Norway, he can just
Okay, so that
catch a train or a flight, and I can guess that it's going to be very, very difficult. Can you hear me?
Yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so I was just saying that, if we are not able to track down these people who went and misrepresented their identities to the Norwegian officials, who then, based on that false information, gave them the visas, it's going to be very difficult for a lot of people within that space, within the sporting, sector, to travel for such events if they genuinely have to do so.
Right, I totally agree with you. And I'm going to move from Abdallah and go to Professor Benjamin Akwe, who is in New York, yes, and of course joining us. Now, I would like to find out, Abdallah terms this as a national embarrassment, right? Please, what are you feeling over where you are, as a Ghanaian? How do you react when you hear some of these, incidents? Prof, I can see you, but I can't hear you. Please, can you unmute your sound? I can see you, but I can't hear you, Prof. Let me know when you are cleared, and we can hear you so we can take you on.
Okay, yeah.
Right, yes, please. Thank you.
Yeah, like I said, I'm just surprised by him using the word "it's a national embarrassment." But the point is that I don't think this thing is covered around the world. It is probably the Ghanaian media that is making something out of nothing, right? Because, like I said, visa issue generally, I don't think at this point it's a systematic problem, right? If it's a systematic problem, right, then they will definitely find ways and means to be able to crack on that, right? But from what I heard a minister saying, it has to do with due diligence, right? The Norwegian embassy didn't do enough due diligence. But the point is that if it's athletes who are going for a program, right, the Norwegian embassy should find ways and means trying to find out the identity of these people. Because if you are sports athletes, for example, you should be somebody in Ghana. You should be known in the Ghanaian sporting space, right? You should be available. You should be somebody who is out over there. Then somebody can go online and just Google your name, and your name is supposed to pop up. So they didn't do their due diligence. Apart from the application being submitted to them, what investigation, what scrutiny did they do actually to find out whether these people are genuine? So I don't see that to be a problem. It is just the Ghanaian media. Because like I said, there are people coming from Latin America, coming from the Caribbean, coming from Southeast Asia, who are engaged in more fraudulent activities when they come to visa issues. But when it comes to Africa, the whole thing is blown out of proportion. Like I said, in the United States, we see so many things over here. So this is not a big deal. I don't think somebody like LeBron James is going to be somebody is going to use LeBron James to go and apply for a visa for an embassy. So the point that the embassy is that the Norwegian embassy did not actually do their own due diligence. If somebody is traveling, if somebody is claiming that I'm this person and the person is traveling, the first thing you have to do is to Google the person's name and make sure that the person's name matches up with the picture. If it doesn't add up, it doesn't add up. So it is due to their own word on due diligence, lack of scrutiny in do the right thing. I don't think this should be blamed on the Ghanaian officials. Right?
Okay.
I don't want it to see as a national embarrassment. I don't know what's an embarrassment about.
You disagree with that term, right?
Yeah,
all right,
I
then.
disagree with that term.
Sure.
I have seen worse situations over here.
Well, I agree, but I think we can also do better. Like I said, we haven't still had a word from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration, and I believe work is ongoing behind the scenes, of course. And of course, also the Norwegian embassy here, the ambassador is a very good friend of ours. She's been on my show like twice, and she's assured us that once things are cleared, she would like to give her take on this, particular incident. So we wait to see how it all pans out. Now, Ferdinand, are you there?
Yes.
I'm wrapping up.
Sorry,
Please, I'm wrapping up briefly. Now, I know young people love to travel, the travel experience, get to know what is happening in other countries. And of course, I always say that Ghana is as important to the West, just as the West is as important to Ghana. So in this case, what do you have to say to this? I mean, how are you going to be affected? And when I talk about you, I'm talking about, your peers, the youth, especially, who love to travel and would love to have the experience of being elsewhere.
Yeah, I think this news is a very big blow in the face of the young people, especially those of us who want to travel for further studies and other agenda, outside of Ghana. But I'd rather not say so much on the issue because I think it's currently in court and the Foreign Affairs Ministry hasn't issued any statement. But let me talk from different perspectives. Now, Ghana has built a relationship with the diplomatic corps in the sense that they believe everything from the offices of government agencies, in the sense that when the Norwegian embassy received a letter from such office, they readily accepted that, okay, this is coming from this office. But the fact that the president of the African Olympic Committee came out to deny that they did not prepare that letter, but some unscrupulous people who try to forge a signature and a letterhead. I think we need to be very, very meticulous when we are dealing with offices and government agencies. I think it's not their fault, of course. It's not their fault that they didn't, the term saying they didn't do their due diligence. No, it's the kind of relationship that Ghana has built with this diplomatic corps that they tend to believe everything from these offices. So I think the media should also, in a way, try to clarify some information before they put it out there. Because now that this information is out there, when everyone takes up, they will think, okay, so people from Ghana who are going to part in athletics have run away. That's not the case. But some unscrupulous people, that was clearly said by the president of the African Olympic Committee. So I think the media should also play their role in trying to get into public rights and accurate information, whatever happened in the country. I think some countries are doing it, trying to verify information before they are put out there. So I think the media should play a very key role in this before any information like this will be put out there. It's going to affect the youth to a large extent.
All right. Well, thank you very much. Ruben, we are wrapping up as it is. It's been a very good time touching on these two major subjects on today's episode. And I would like to say a big thank you to you, Ruben Addo, news editor with Pan-African Television, for your time. And of course, for helping us put today's show together. Thank you always. And before I take leave of you, of course, it is in order that I express our appreciation to our online or virtual guest panelists who actually held us down when we had to discuss these issues. I wanted to collect different perspectives on that subject, and I think we did justice to it. So let me begin by saying thank you to His Excellency Dr. Emmanuel Habu Kabumba, the former Foreign Affairs Minister of Ghana. Thank you so much for joining us. We really, really appreciate your time. He's a senior mediation advisor with the Mediation Support Unit of the United Nations Department for Political and Peace Building Affairs. Thank you very much, Excellency. And also Professor Benjamin Akwe, who lives in the United States of America, New York to be precise, Professor of International Relations and Comparative Politics and Government of Africa and Middle East. Thank you so much for your inputs as well. And Mr. Ferdinand Bryce Joe Asma, founder, Youth in Diplomacy and Community Development and head of programs, Emerging Diplomats Model, United Nations. Of course, I had the opportunity to be on your platform not too long ago, and I really, really enjoyed it. Thank you so much, and keep up with the good work. And my own senior journalist, Abdella, who mentored me during our days at Metro Television. He's moved on. He's with TV3 right now, and he is doing a lot by serving the good people of Ghana. Thank you so much, Abdella Mohammed, for your time. And of course, Ruben, thank you. All right, everyone. Thank you also for watching. We so much appreciate your you being part of our show. Without you, there is no show, I always say. So we are grateful for your time. My name is Harriet Nati. The show is Diplomatic Affairs, and we look forward to seeing you same time next week. Bye-bye.
Truly African. Truly African. Truly African.
Nana barka Yem na twana ne kasula ne nyampalane ne chane worshina zuo ebia iyanga inganga na woni MP soko fa Ghana mulchi bae kafa Ghana tengbam bae kalyab ga Ghana karatam kalanga zo Katabilchese Netejilma Karalamna Excellency John Dramani Mahama, accompanied by Excellency Lordina Mahama, the fourth President of the Fourth Republic and the First Lady of the Fourth Republic. National Chairman of our great party and General Secretary, National Campaign Manager, Council of Elders present, colleague members of Parliament, colleague parliamentary candidates. My task here is a very simple one, is to introduce that one gentleman of the Republic. Hey! That one gentleman of the Republic. The humble giant, John Dramani Mahama. Ayezu, yes, ala bilchima wuya. Yes, ala bilchima wuya. Akbang ma prigopolo. Biya ne bawuya, biya ne ba majire. Biya ne bawuya, kawani wula ba majire. And to remind, as National Chairman said, President Nana Akufo-Addo be reminded that the 2024 presidential and parliamentary election is not a coronation. It's an election that John Dramani Mahama will win. And you have no option than to hand over power to him, respecting the sovereign will of the Ghanaian people. Make some noise. That's all. Open lure me. Nabe abu poraba. John Mama pun lure me. 2024 election war in northern Ghana, the 5 regions of northern region. John Mahama Kwen Lula Bawia Kayer Yoshene Luna. Lion number. Make some noise. You know, John Dramani Mahama is coming to the presidency with unparalleled rich experience and not experiments. He's been deputy minister, vice president, acting president, and president. He will come to the presidency with a renewed sense of vigor in self-correct to right the wrongs of the past, and in particular the wrongs of Nana Addo Dankwa and Dr. Excellency John Dramani Mahama, when he cannot check a Kopao, then you took Galgala, when he cannot cut in your song, a new Excellency John Dramani. When he had Nala, near is also Wuyamo, the next president of the Republic of Ghana, inshallah, comes 7th January. When he cannot. And Temale onda pumtilge shale Gambaga wale Gambaga Nakwanduru Bunkurugu Sola Muni Yankana Temale. Nam. Excellency John Dramani Mahama Muni Yankana Kacharpune Naburkurugu Kabanyo Kosong and you. Mbo Kabanda Masiri never known quantity Nanam Kabana Bangi Bayara Sola Kabana. And Excellency John Dramani Mahama, when he comes to the presidency, We all know what the country is going through. A country in crisis, a nation in crisis, admitted even by Nana Addo Dankwa is in crisis, is an admission of failure. The savior is coming. Excellency John Dramani Mahama.
Thank you.
He comes to the presidency at a critical stage of our national life to save the country from state capture and to save the country from the existential threat to our democracy and our well-being. He comes to it working on 3 important hallmarks. Compassion. He comes to it with compassion. And he comes to the presidency with judgment. Mali Yeshile, oye Yusuf Nama.
Hey!
Yo Yusuf Nama.
Hey!
Oye Yusuf Nama.
Hey!
It is now my prime pleasure and singular honor to invite the next president of the Republic.
Wave your flag! Wave your flag!
Let me see your hands in the air! 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 Wave your flag! Wave your
and may the heavens heal the land. We need a land Oh, Ghana needs a change. No lions, and red,
Thank you very much. Let me begin by thanking the Almighty God for protecting and preserving all of us to be able to see this day, and to pray to Him to continue to protect and preserve us so that on 7th December we can exercise our franchise and vote to change the trajectory of our country, Ghana, and make the lives of our people better. On this occasion, I'd like to thank all our supporters, our sympathizers, our foot soldiers, our activists for the strong work that you do to keep our party strong and vibrant. On this occasion, I remember one of our foot soldiers called Wasiu. Wasiu would have been here with us. We call him popularly Aponche. For those of you who are in Asin North, he is the one who, when there was pressure, he took a cement block and raised it and fought for NDC. Today he's not with us. May Allah grant him peaceful rest. Ghana is at an important juncture in its history, and the decision that we make on 7th December is going to reflect on the future of this country. A member of the New Patriotic Party, a friend of mine and a former colleague MP, said, it's not Ghana that needs change. He says it's change that needs Ghana. Change is calling Ghana. And that's Kennedy, Honorable Kennedy Ejapong. Change needs Ghana because in the last Afrobarometer survey, more than 80% of Ghanaians said that our country is going in the wrong direction. And if you are going in the wrong direction, if you are walking or you are driving and you are going in the wrong direction, what do? You change your course. And that is why on 7th December, Ghana must change course. We cannot solve the crisis in which we are with the same people who caused the crisis in the first place. Several years ago, somebody came and said, try me. Monso Menche. The result is what we are seeing today. Today another person has come and he's also saying, try me. And he's saying the same things the one who has helped to put us in this ditch was saying 8 years ago. And what they say is that if after 4 years I don't do well, change me. The youth of this country don't have 4 years to waste. The youth of this country are in a hurry to create the opportunities that will make them live a dignified life. They're not going to try somebody and after 4 years decide whether you should continue. The youth of this country want an experienced hand. They want a safe pair of hands. They want a hand that they have seen do it before to come back and take this country and rescue us from the mess in which we have been dumped by the Akufo-Addo Bawumia government. My brothers and sisters, it is not going to be easy. The more I look at the figures, the more I look at our situation, it is even worse than what this government is telling us. It's going to take a lot of hard work. And as has been said, one person alone cannot do it. We would need the cooperation of the whole country to be able to lift Ghana back on its feet again. I've been out of government for almost 8 years now. I did my best. I wouldn't say things were perfect, but at least we're making progress. What I can promise you is that I will be truthful to you. I will never tell you lies. I will never tell you things that I can't do. The problem with this country is that our policies are based on the short cycle of winning elections every 4 years. And we are not creating the foundation for this economy to take off. And so, we're not making you promises. I'm promising you that I'll work hard, day and night, to make sure that we reset the fortunes of this country. 4 years of a good leader will make more impact than 8 years of a dishonest leader. It's not about how long you serve. It is about how well you serve. It's not about 8 years or 4 years. It is about hard work. It is about truth. It is about trust. And it is about doing the things that will create a future for our young people. And that is why the NDC is calling on you on 7th December to do your duty to your God and country so that we can turn this nation around. This government is living in an illusion. They are living in a dream world. They are living in a fantasy world. Because if you are not living in an illusion, when people are hungry, how can you tell them they are satisfied? Puma and the Nyale. And the Nyale, Kakum Malma, Kakanti Yelman and Teria. Then we can feel the pangs of hunger, and yet this government tells us we are satisfied, and that never in Akufo-Addo's government have people gone hungry. Meanwhile, the statistics clearly show that 8 million of our citizens last year in 2023 went 24 hours without food because they couldn't afford to buy food. Meanwhile, the statistics tell us that almost 2 million of our young people are sitting at home. They are not in school, they are not in education, they are not in training, and they are not in employment. They are just sitting at home idle. And most of them are still living in their parents' houses because they don't have an income to be able to start a life of their own. The statistics tell us that unemployment has risen from just above 8% in 2016 to 14.7%. And yet, they say things have never been this better. And they have the audacity to compare themselves to our first president, Osagyefo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. How can you compare this useless government that has led Ghana into such crisis to the government of Kwame Nkrumah? The statistics again tell us that things are not well with this country. All the statistics. For a government that said it was going to come with an economic wizard, an economic guru, and that is the reason why he was being brought, to stabilize the economy and stabilize the currency. To take the cedi from 4 cedis to 16 cedis and tell us that, clap for us, we've done well. If such a government is not living in an illusion, what else is an illusion? For a government that has taken inflation as far as 54%, and it is currently still above 20%, to tell us that we should clap for them because they've done well. If they are not living in an illusion, then I don't know what an illusion is. But that is the beauty of democracy. It gives us the opportunity every 4 years to make a change. And the time has come for us to make that change. The time has come for us to reset Ghana. And I believe that 4 years is enough to do the reset of Ghana. We will reset this country so that future generations can come and build on that foundation. Our intention is to ameliorate the damage that has been done. we all saw what happened in the banking sector clean-out. The indigenous capital of Ghanaians in our banking sector was wiped away with one very reckless decision. And so today, most of our people who were working in the banking sector for these banks are today unemployed, and I'm sure there are some of them here. Today, some of them are Uber drivers, some are bakers, some are even driving Aboboya and Mahama Kambu. The time has come for us to make a change. And I've said when we come, we will restore for those who unjustifiably had their banking licenses withdrawn, we shall restore their licenses to them. So that we can create more employment for our people. The debt restructuring has given people haircuts, and that's what Nana was talking about. Today, the savings of our middle class has been eroded because of the debt restructuring. Our pensioners, and I'm sure there are some of the pensioners here, your provident fund that you used to buy bonds and other things, in order that when you go on pension, you'll be able to buy your medication and be able to look after yourself. Today, this government has endangered your future. Many might not live long because they cannot afford to buy medicines. And this government does not deserve 1 day longer. But our constitution says they still have 5 months to go. But come December, we must take the decision that will change the trajectory of our country. The world is waiting for a signal. Ghana is waiting for a signal. Investors are all holding on because they want to see what will happen in Ghana. We must take a decision on 7th December that shows the world that we are serious people and that we know that our country needs a turnaround. And so 7th December, let us all make sure we come out in our numbers and we vote so that we move this government out. Let us not lose hope. Let us have hope, because I can assure you that the next NDC government is a government that will restore hope and create opportunities for our young people. NDC has the men and the women, and it's not like what the MPP said, we have the men, and we didn't know they were area boys. NDC has capable men and women who are capable of turning our fortunes around. And our first priority is going to be job creation, so that we can create jobs for the teeming youth of this country. And that is why I'm proposing the 24-hour economic policy. The policy is going to be linked with aggressive food production and modernization of our agriculture. And that's why I'm saying in every district we're going to create farmer service centers. We will bring the tractors, the planters, the plows, the seeds, the fertilizer. And if you're a farmer, you must register with the center. And at the beginning of the farming season, we'll give you all the inputs that you need so that you can produce your crops. And when you have sold your crops, you come back and pay for the inputs that you have been given. The 24-hour economy is going to be linked to an accelerated export development program. We're going to create agro-processing zones, and we're going to create a new class of agribusiness people. And so all you young people will be encouraged to go into agro-processing. You can buy the food of the farmers, you can process it, package it nicely, either for domestic consumption or for export. And there's going to be an accelerated export development program, of which I, the President, will be the chairman, to make sure that we increase the exports of Ghana. Ghana has the human resources to turn our nation around. Ghanaians are capable. Ghanaians are capable. They need the right leadership. They need a selfless leadership. And that is why I'm saying that governance is going to be a key platform of the new government. One of the things we will continue is the work Professor Tamil started of reviewing the 1992 Constitution and amending it so that it will be a living document that guides our country into the future. We will continue the constitutional review to amend the various sectors that are holding us back. We know that the vast majority of our people want our district chief executives to be elected so that they can hold them accountable. We will look at the work the Constitutional Review Committee did, and I think that in 4 years we can forge the consensus that will amend the Constitution and make it a better document for us. Another aspect of governance will be to strengthen the institutions. We are going to work with the judiciary. We are going to work with Parliament so that we can strengthen these institutions in order that they can be the bulwark of our democracy. But of course, the most important issue in governance is the fight against corruption and accountability. If you don't want to be accountable, go and do your own business. Whatever you do in your business, nobody is coming to hold you to account because it is your own investment. But if you decide that you want to come into public service, then be prepared to be held accountable. And so I've said it and I'll say it again. For those people who have been involved in scandals and various acts of misappropriation in this government, this MPP government, we shall investigate you and we will let the law take its course. We will hold everybody to account. And if you have abused your public trust, the people of Ghana will exact the sanction that is required. But I serve notice too that our country is at a pivotal point. This is our last opportunity. If you read the Afrobarometer survey, you will find that trust in democracy is at its lowest in our history. And this is our last opportunity to salvage our democracy. So it is not going to be business as usual. For those who wish to serve in the new administration, know that you're coming to serve in an administration of modesty. You're coming to serve in an administration of honesty. You are coming to serve in an administration of hard work, and you are coming to serve in an administration of accountability. And so as we hold the previous government accountable for wrongdoings, if you serve in the John Mahama government, the next John Mahama government, if you are accused of wrongdoing, you will also be punished and held accountable. Because it is going to be asked, they say in the Akan language, Aba yadibo techino, enwa en yadibo boban. And so if you want to serve in this administration, you must be prepared to be accountable. We are going to launch our manifesto next month, in August, before the end of August. And we're launching it in Central Region. So Central Region, when you go back, start preparing. We're coming to launch the manifesto. And when we launch the manifesto, there are a lot of interesting things there. We will spell out the blueprint that we intend to pursue to change the fortunes of our country. But let me just mention a few, and I think Nana did. Our women are the majority of our population. And our women dominate the commerce, trade, agriculture, agro-processing sectors of our economy. And yet sometimes